Not long ago, somebody asked me, what's next for the church? And my first thought was, well, I'm not a prophet or the son of the prophet. I don't know what's next for the church. But I continue to dwell on that question in the days after. What is next for the church? Where are we headed? What obstacles will we face? What opportunities lie ahead? Well, I don't know for sure, but I do have some thoughts on the question. I believe what's next is a more global church, international, where even as we sit in our own communities, we'll have a greater sense of our contribution and greater opportunity to participate in God's work around the world. Not long ago, I was sitting in a church here in Knoxville, and a missionary that church supports came back and spoke. The missionary's name is Matt, and he and his family were ministering in Jordan, which is just across the Jordan River from Israel, and it's just south of Syria. And they were ministering there among Muslim people, including some of the 1.5 million refugees who had fled from war-torn Syria down into Jordan for safety. And as Matt described his ministry to this supporting church, he deliberately kept saying, here's what we have been able to do. And by we, he wasn't talking about himself and his wife, but himself and his wife and the church. Matt was deliberately emphasizing to the church, because you're sending us there, we're doing this ministry together. We, together, have bought mattresses for these refugees to sleep on. We provided them with heaters in the winter and with fans in the summer. We provided food. We started a kids club where these Muslim children hear stories about Jesus and do crafts and get the chance just to be kids and laugh and have fun. We, together, baptized this family of former Muslims in the Jordan River. And I sat there just in equal parts convicted and appreciative and excited, because we live in a time in history with the ease of travel, with opportunities of technology. We live in a time where we can participate day in and day out with God's expansion of his kingdom down every dusty road in every village and in every metropolis and amid every skyscraper. God has given us the opportunity to bear the fruit of his gospel globally. And so I think what's next for the church is a greater sense of and greater participation in his global mission. Similarly, what's next is a more ethnically diverse church. And I'm not talking just here of sending missionaries internationally, but I'm talking about embracing those in our neighborhoods and in our workplaces, those in our families who have different ethnic backgrounds. Not long ago, I attended the Metro Christian Convention in New York. It's an annual convention that's really kind of a rallying point for Christian churches around the city. And I sat there worshiping with all these brothers and sisters and realized joyously that as a Caucasian, I was in the minority. As around me sat and sang believers of Latino background, of Chinese background, of African background, and really every other ethnic background you could think of. And I thought to myself, wow, this is what heaven will be like. Every tongue, every tribe, every nation. But then I also thought to myself, may his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. May we worship here together like we will one day worship there together. If churches hope to survive, even more than that, to thrive in the future, we must embrace brothers and sisters who are of different backgrounds. We have to do the difficult work of laying aside our assumptions, our politics, our preconceived notions, our Facebook posts, and we have to listen and to love. I think what's next is a church more global and a church more ethnically diverse. And then third, I believe in the future we're looking at a church that will be more missional. If we're to survive, if we're to thrive, by missional I mean that we won't be sitting back just waiting for our communities to come to church and then complaining when they don't. Instead, we'll actively engage people, actual people, not just stereotypes and labels, but engage people relationally and compassionately, missionally, functioning as salt and light in our communities. Matt Friedman is a Christian teacher in Mississippi, and he was invited to serve on a panel for a local television news program. There's a newscaster moderating this panel. They had gotten the panel together to talk about some moral problems that had plagued their community. The city council president and another councilman were facing prison time because of shady deals that they had made with a local exotic dance club. So the panel moderator opens up the panel and then looks straight at Friedman and asks, "Matt, whose fault is all this?" And Friedman said, "Suddenly I became agitated. I prepared to tell her in dramatic on-air fashion that we're a nation of laws and that the council president trampled on those laws, and if we're looking for a place to blame, there's only one place to put it, smack dab in his lap as he sits in his well-deserved jail cell." But before those words left his lips, another panelist spoke up, a man named John Perkins. Perkins is a nationally recognized Christian writer and teacher. And Perkins blurted out, "It's my fault." Well, everyone turned his direction. He continued, he said, "I've lived in this community for decades as a Bible teacher. I should have been able to create an environment where what our council president did would have been unthinkable. You want someone to blame?" Perkins said, "I'll take the blame. All of it." You see, our world, it does not yet reflect God's holiness. And as Christians, we can respond to this reality by pointing angry fingers at all the corruption, or we can accept our responsibility to function as salt and light and actively, compassionately advance the kingdom of Christ. John Stott explained it this way. He said, "So why don't we Christians have a more wholesome effect on society? We look at deteriorating trends around us. We see social injustice and racial conflict and violence in the streets, and corruption in high places, sexual promiscuity. Who's to blame?" Stott said our habit is to blame everybody except ourselves. But he said, let me put it in a different way. If the house is dark at night, there's no sense in blaming the house for its darkness. That's what happens when the sun goes down. The question to ask is, where's the light? And again, if the meat goes bad and becomes inedible, there's no sense in blaming the meat for its decay. That's what happens when bacteria are left free to breed. No, the question to ask is, where's the salt? Similarly, if society becomes corrupt, like a dark night or a stinking fish, there's no sense in blaming society for its corruption. That's what happens when human evil is left unchecked and unrestrained. No, Stott says the question to ask is, where's the church? Where's the salt and light of Jesus? If we're to survive, to thrive, we've got to missionally engage our culture, not just sit back and wait for them to come to us, but to engage them. Well, what's next for the church? I'm still not a prophet or the son of a prophet, but when I look ahead, I believe we'll be a more global, ethnically diverse, and missional church.